Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to a blind reaction to part 3 of a critique of Outlast. Yeah, you may be surprised. 2 days in a row we have a reaction to this. Well, I already said I was going to get to these basically when I can and everything. And today it was basically either between this and reacting to a movie, and I just decided I just didn't want to do a movie today. Especially since I took the dog for a walk and a bit tired still from that, so I decided, you know what, we'll just do another reaction for this and continue going. Because as I did say in yesterday's episode, in yesterday's reaction, I am definitely interested to hear more of what Milo has to say about this. So last time he continued on the story and characters, and supposedly from what I've been told, he's going to finish that up this time before moving on to the gameplay and mechanics and stuff. That kind of stuff, like, with this kind of series, this is one of those few kinds of series I don't care a lot about spoilers. Just don't tell me the things he's going to say, but if you're telling me, like, oh, what you did tell me, Everett, like, oh, this episode's going to finish off the story and the characters and stuff, that stuff's fine. I'm fine with that. But yeah, just don't tell me, like, character, or just, just don't tell me, specific details of what he's going to say or whatnot. So yeah, as I mentioned with the last one, it definitely seemed like he was possibly taking some criticism into account based on just his presentation and all. Because as you remember, in the first one, he did seem, at least to me, I felt he seemed like he was acting all high and mighty about his opinion and acting very pompous and everything. But in the second part, he was definitely a lot more chill with that. And I don't know if it's just because, like, people had mentioned something about that and everything. And as I said last time as well, I don't believe he actually is all high and mighty about his opinion and everything. I think it's just how he came across, and it was, like I said, most likely unintentional. So yeah, last time he finished talking about, like, the main focus of the story of the main game, as well as started talking about the characters and what he thought about them as they are presented. For example, he seemed to be pretty cool about Chris Walker. He liked, especially, the Doctor. But he was not a fan of the twins. He felt the twins were just kind of pointless and had no real need to be there, had no real deep connection to the story. And I can see what he's saying with stuff like that. I enjoyed them nonetheless. And I thought they were very much, even though they may not have been needed, they were very much welcomed. But I do agree that Dr. Traeger is the most entertaining character. Even if, as I said last time, I do think his section of the game isn't great for replayability and all. So yeah, from what I've gathered, he is going to just talk about the main game first and then do Whistleblower after, which I'm fine with. It makes sense. So yeah, we're going to see how everything goes with that. Now, when he starts talking about gameplay and mechanics and stuff, there's a few things that I know he's probably going to discuss, such as the entire night vision factor of things, the batteries and whatnot. He's already discussed documents and notes, so I doubt he'll talk a lot more about that, maybe a little bit more. But it's like there's not really a lot of gameplay elements. He's probably going to talk about hiding and vaulting over things, running, and all of that jazz. The fact that you can't fight and all. But there's not really a lot of, like, heavy gameplay to Outlast. So it's definitely going to be interesting to hear what he does have to say. Now, I am hoping that he does start to veer away a little bit more from the just direct comparisons to other reviews and stuff. At least not to do it as often and make it last as long during the video, because he tends to just take those a little too far, as I've said. And I just feel like it gets to be a little too much, and it almost feels like, oh, I'm just going to knock on these guys' opinions and thoughts rather than give my own. And I know that's not what he's doing, and I know that's not intentional, but it almost comes across like that when you're spending so much time, like, focusing on them and everything, and their reviews. And it's like, there's nothing inherently wrong with, like, using that kind of thing, like with explaining what, like, other people would think about it, and how you compare in contrast to that. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just, I feel like he just does it for too long during the videos. It just drags it on a bit too much. But we'll see where this part goes. As I have stated in the past videos and everything, and I just want to reiterate here, I am a fan of Outlast. Mauler is clearly speaking from the perspective of someone who is not a fan of the game. Doesn't necessarily despise it, but just isn't a fan. I am a fan, and I'm kind of in the same boat, just on the other side of the river, to use a metaphor, I guess. That kind of just happened. I wasn't intending to say that. But yeah, I'm kind of on the other side. I like it. I enjoy the game. But I wouldn't, like, say I adore it or anything. It's not, like, my favorite game ever. But it's definitely up there for horror games for me. And just real quick, I do want to explain kind of the reason why. I'll be honest, horror games for me are just like horror movies for me. And as to explain what that means is that with horror movies, a lot of them I am completely unimpressed by. In fact, I'd say most of them. Most horror movies I do not think are good. And especially because they usually fail at the one integral part of horror, and that is to be scary. Most horror movies are not scary. The Exorcist is not scary. Most of the Friday the 13th movies are not scary. Most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, not scary. Hell, Freddy Krueger in general is not scary, except in the Jackie Earle Haley remake. But that's because they actually took the character seriously, which is a good thing. But I'm not going to get into that. But horror video games are much in the same. A lot of them tend to just either not be scary or are just completely uninteresting. Now, Mauler references Amnesia a lot because he's made it clear that that's his favorite horror game. And it's kind of the complete opposite on me. I'm not a fan of Amnesia. I mean, it's like his feelings with Outlast, though. I don't despise Amnesia. I'm just not a fan. I find it boring. Yes, it has amazing atmosphere. I won't argue that. It's amazing in terms of atmosphere. But honestly, otherwise, it's just really boring. The story is uninteresting. The character of, I think his name is Daniel, is completely unmemorable to me. It's like, I remember the characters in Outlast much more than I remember almost anything about what I've played of Amnesia. And all I do remember, hell, I basically have to be reminded of, because Amnesia was not a memorable experience for me. And, like, when you compare it to some of my favorite horror games outside of Outlast, the likes of, like, the Evil Within franchise, or, of course, Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil 2, either of those two specifically. Although, the other Resident Evils, at least some of them are probably good. I don't like 6. I haven't seen or played all of them. I know I do not like 6. I have seen that. I love 7. And I love 2. I have not seen the original. I have not seen 4. I have not seen 3. So hopefully I'll see those or play them myself at some point in the future. But the point is, like, compared to those games, Amnesia is just excessively uninteresting and boring and unmemorable. It doesn't do anything to hook me into the story or the characters. It doesn't do anything to make me care. And while the atmosphere is great and the scary portion of it is, well, scary, it's like, it's not something that I desire to play through any more than I already have. It's not something that I desire to watch through. I've tried watching multiple Let's Plays of it, from even Let's Players I love, like Markiplier. He's my favorite, he's just generally my favorite YouTuber. But I could not watch his Let's Play of Amnesia because the game was just so boring and uninteresting. Even with Mark being just Mark, I still couldn't. Same with Jacksepticeye. And whoever else I tried to watch. I don't remember every single person. I tried a few different people, though, and I couldn't get through it with any. I couldn't get through a single episode with any of them. The game is just not interesting, in my opinion. But that's all that this is about. It's all subjective. It's all about subjectivity. And that's all reviews and criticisms and thoughts on anything in media is. Whether it's a movie, a cartoon, an anime, a video game, a comic book, your thoughts on it is all subjective. Whether the story is good or bad, whether the characters are good or bad, whether the soundtrack, the art and animation, all of that is subjective. And again, as I've stated in the past, that's a good thing, because that allows us to be able to have these differing opinions, to share them, to be able to, well, in some cases debate with each other, in some cases just be able to have, like, what's the word? Have communication with each other over them. And even if we have differing opinions, we can still respect each other's opinions and respect each other's viewpoints on it. So, yeah, it's just, I feel like we just need to keep that in mind, though. But either way, I am very much excited to see what more we have with this series of videos. So this part is 27 minutes 40 seconds, about 5 minutes longer than part 2, but not as long as part 1. In fact, about 5 minutes shorter than part 1. So it's a little longer than last time, but last time went by really quick at the same time. It was over before I even, like, realized. So I'm hoping that he at least keeps these parts entertaining enough and enjoyable enough, and gives me enough to talk about and to compare thoughts on, that it goes by quickly. So we're just going to get into this either way and hope it goes well. So when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black, then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the video. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. Okay, and we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so, parts 3 and 4 of A Critique of Outlast. So yeah, you guys may have been wondering what I was talking about in my pre-thoughts and all, because you saw the title, you saw it says 3 and 4, but I only mentioned 3 in the pre-thoughts. I wasn't planning on doing 4 as well, it just kind of happened. But let's talk about this. So these 2 parts were mostly focused on mechanics and stuff. There's a little bit of story stuff at the beginning of part 3, but, well, mostly character stuff. But it was mostly just mechanics and gameplay elements and stuff. And you notice there wasn't a lot of points where I was, like, really heavily talking or whatnot. It's not so much that I was, like, trying to pay heavy attention. It's just there wasn't much to say. Not because I necessarily agreed or even disagreed with him. It's just there's not really much to say regarding that, I feel. For me, the gameplay and mechanics elements were fine. They weren't anything amazing, but they were not anything bad either. I had no issue with the way that the enemies behaved. I had no issue with the way that you had to get from place to place or set piece to set piece or whatever. I had no issue with any of that. To me, it felt like it made sense for the game. It felt like it was a natural part of how this game worked. And it just like I said, just worked. It just made sense. The entire thing about the placement of the fuses and whatnot, like, that one I will kind of agree with, that the fuses did seem to kind of be placed weirdly, like they were like being worshipped or something. But that might have been Father Martin. I mean, it very possibly could have. Now, another thing he noted that I had to note here is that prior to this, when he was originally talking about Chris Walker, when he started talking about the characters and stuff, he seemed to be completely fine with Chris. He seemed to even enjoy the character. But then he starts talking about this stuff, and now it's almost sounding like he doesn't like Chris Walker as a character. And I'm like confused. And his big thing seems to be that he's there too much. That's basically it, that he's there too much. And I don't see that as an issue. It's like Chris Walker is not the main antagonist. He's not the main final villain or anything. But he's the most notable one throughout the game. He's the one who is consistently after you. And yes, he's killing others as well. But that doesn't mean that he's not still after you. And after the Wall Rider as well and all that. Like, and he complained about, like, Chris just randomly appearing in places where you happen to be, and it's like, you've never heard of coincidences? Yes, that's a lot of coincidences to string together, sure. But he happens to just be in the same places as you. At the same times, pretty much. It's just coincidence, more than anything. He complains about some of the characters not being as unique and interesting as the likes of Traeger. And while I agree that the other characters definitely aren't, at least not until the DLC, I don't think it really made that much of a difference. Yes, Traeger was definitely the most unique and interesting, for sure, but Chris Walker was unique and interesting. The twins were unique and interesting. That's how this game went, and that's fine. There were a bunch of these just random variants, as they're called, just running around the world and proving to be troublesome to you. But then there's the main enemies, the actual, like, real threats, the ones you have to watch out for, and that honestly made a lot of sense to me. Having the random mini enemies just running around places, and then having like little sections with the major enemies, that just worked. It felt very natural, especially in the setting, with the setting being, of course, the insane asylum, having a few notable crazies in there who would definitely kind of be at the top of the hierarchy in this place. Chris Walker for his size and strength, as well as his relentless pursuit of people. Traeger because, well, I wouldn't say he's the most sane, but he's the most, he has the most comprehension of things going on. And the twins, who are just cannibalistic crazies and everything, they are, I will admit, the twins are the weaker ones of the big enemies. But you get the point. It's just like they all felt like they served their purpose. The twins were to unnerve you, to make you, even more creeped out than you already were. They weren't there to be like this massive threat in comparison to everything else. They were there basically for the atmosphere of the world that this game built, which, again, as I said in the video, in the reaction, was the asylum itself. And it's like a lot of his points in here, I don't really have, again, anything to say to. It's like, other than just the very basic, it's like, I didn't mind any of the mechanics or gameplay elements or anything. I thought they were fine. They weren't anything great or amazing, but they were fine. They weren't bad. They were just kind of okay. But either way, so there wasn't really a lot to really discuss or dive into with these parts. So I'm hoping that he starts to get into more stuff that I can talk about next time. We'll just have to see. I will say that I probably will not be doing this again tomorrow or Thursday, just because it's like I just don't feel like I'll probably have the time tomorrow, and then Thursday I do want to at least try to get to one of the movies that I have to do. Because as you know, there's not only the monthly movie, but I do have movies to do as part of the donation rewards that aren't just a series on, one day a week. The movies are whenever I can get to them, and I haven't gotten to any of them yet, so I want to start doing that. So yeah, I probably won't do any more critique of Outlast tomorrow or Thursday. Maybe on Friday, since... well, actually, no. I was going to say since One Punch Man's over, but no, we're replacing that with Amphibia. So Carol on Tuesday and Amphibia are this week. But maybe on Friday, if we can get to it, and maybe on Saturday, because there's no JoJo this week and MLP's on hiatus as well. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm not going to promise anything, but anything can happen at the same time. Everett, I know you're going to leave a book report on your thoughts on what happened, on what Mauler said in these parts, because you tend to do that. So I'll check out your thoughts on all of that when you post them. But yeah, just general thoughts on the gameplay mechanics and stuff. I didn't mind them at all. And yeah, it's just like, there were, again, you saw my reactions. There were like a couple things that I did agree with him on and all. But most of these ones I feel were definitely just kind of just general disagreement, I guess you could say. Because again, with the gameplay and mechanics and all, it's just like I don't think they were bad, like he's kind of saying. And specifically with each section and whatnot. I just don't think it was that bad at all. But we'll see what more we get into. And just as another reminder, like I said in my pre-thoughts, I am a fan of this game. Mauler is not. And for those of you who may not know, when Everett donated to get me to react to this and all, he knew that it probably wouldn't change my mind. And I'm talking to you as well, Everett, now, and yeah, it's probably not. Again, I can see some of his points, and I can understand where he's coming from on some points, but at the same time, I still love this game, and I don't think that's going to change. So either way, thank you so much for continuing to tune in. And yeah, I am definitely much more enjoying this. I did notice in these two parts that he did include much less of the comparisons with other reviewers, which I am super happy about, that he's not just running those forever anymore. He even kind of referenced into that. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. None of that. And he definitely seems to be portraying it more as like, oh, this is just my opinion. It's fine if you still like it or whatnot. He's definitely portraying that more and more with each part, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that he's making it clear that this is just his viewpoint on the games. Game. And I'm really happy that he's acknowledging that if we still like it, me and whoever else does like it, then that's completely fine. And I appreciate that. It's the same thing as when I drop any series. Like, for example, since it was recently dropped, Reincarnated as a Slime. If you love Reincarnated as a Slime and think it's a fantastic show, all the power to you. I support you thinking that. I support you loving the show. Just because I don't doesn't mean that you shouldn't. I like it when people... I actually straight up like it and support it when people like shows that I don't. Because it means that the show has an audience and is doing something right that appeals to someone. And if it's a show that I love and if someone doesn't like it, then it's just not for them. Not every show has to appeal to every person. And it's just like that with this game. It's like, I'm not upset by any means that Milo doesn't like it. He's allowed to not like it. I was just upset, like, the first part of this video series because he was portraying it as if it were, like, objective fact that the game is terrible and you should be ashamed for liking it. But again, he fixed that. He fixed that, and it was made clear that that wasn't intentional, that he wasn't meaning to be pompous and everything, that it just kind of came out like that, unfortunately. Either way, thank you so much for tuning in. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,